5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have Lorenzo Foffani. Did I pronounce your name correct?
Yes, Lorenzo Foffani. So more or less is right.
Lorenzo Foffani. And really pleased, and it's a privilege to have you here joining us at the CMO Asia podcast today. It's Friday, 5 p.m. In fact, 5 minutes past 5 here this afternoon in Singapore. Where exactly you are, what's happening in your city for the past couple of weeks? Give us an update.
So I'm from Milan, but now I'm in Switzerland. So you can see, I can show you. So the good thing about, what is happening is that sometimes you can go out and, you can decide the setting of your office. So that's where I am at the moment.
It's so beautiful.
And, so it's nice, So Milan, as you know, has gone through a hard pandemic. Now things are better. But things have changed. So one of the things is you kind of go and where you like and you work from there. So that's kind of nice.
That's brilliant. And I know that Italy has been hard hit, especially northern part, right, in the beginning of the pandemic. But now things are kind of back to, no, I wouldn't say normal. It's a new normal, right? And there are many challenges that are faced by marketers around the world. No matter where you are, this pandemic has affected everyone. So I think this is a great channel and vehicle for us to maybe talk to you more about that. And of course, all the fantastic and brilliant, digital campaigns you've done for the likes of Nike, Air Max, which my colleagues in Japan have told me about. They say this is a really brilliant digital campaign that I should check out. That's how I found you on LinkedIn, by the way. And of course, recently there's also the death of the maestro, Ennio Morricone. So I think when I saw, that you're from Italy as well, you're a perfect guest for this show, and to also allow us to play some tunes by Morricone later on in the program. And then maybe we can jam about it and talk about all things marketing, talk about, a day in the life of a, head of strategy at AKQA. Maybe start off by telling us what's a day in your life, working as the role of head of strategy like.
Yes. So first is, I will start with what you said at the beginning, which is, everyone is talking about the new normal. And I'm not sure normality is the aim of everyone. Like, of course, when you get into something difficult and tough, then you're like going back to normality. But also is any crisis make you change things. And what you do see is that change is possible. So everyone is like, oh, maybe I do want to work in a different way or in a different place, or, there is a bit of a disruption, and normality is, not necessarily the best way to come back. In that sense, all that, remote, a lot of time, I think that going to your question, our daily show, the daily routine as a head of strategy, there is a lot of PowerPoint, a lot of traveling, a lot of meetings. But now you have way less traveling. So in that sense, for example, there are many more remote meeting or conversation that we have in that right now. So, and that helped focus a little more on the work, which I like. So, to have some bit of more time to think about project and problems. And I think if I have to put it in a word, what I do like about my job would be probably to address complexity and bring it back to a simple solution. So to simplicity, it could be a product, it could be a communication, an idea, but you deal with a lot of complexity in the digital world, in the service, in the, every brand and business has a lot of complexity, and we try to make it simpler than it is. So that's what I try to do. And today's is a bit of less traveling, a bit more, going in the mountain and have a bit of a run or a hike around, and that helps sometimes. So yeah.
I love it. I remember I saw a quote that you put up on your LinkedIn, right? Simplicity. Basically, that's a keyword. And I can see, you're surrounded by really basic things right now, the nature. You're surrounded by things that, of course, that if you're back in the hustle and bustle of city life, right? These are the things and the images that you miss. So when you show us that particular background of yours, I'm kind of jealous because I'm still, in a city where, we are still slowly seeing things back to normal, but more cars on the roads, more pollution, definitely. All these things are coming back. So that's probably one of the things that I will miss if we're back to the normal. But of course, you mentioned about simplicity. We have spoken a little bit about the new normal. You have less traveling, and daily life has been somewhat different now. Marketers have also faced more than a few unique challenges, right, in 2020 that impacts both their business and their budgets. So can you maybe let us learn more about how, what are the approaches that you take to overcome this COVID-19 crisis? And I think for the clients that you manage as well, how do you help them to regain ROI, with insights like, for example, into planned budgets and future performance of your amazing and brilliant digital campaigns?
So first is, you mentioned simplicity, and Leonardo da Vinci, for example, he used to say that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. So it's a difficult ending point. So one thing is connect to the basics, but simplicity very often is not the basic, is a difficult and long roadmap. So you get to something that is meaningful, memorable, and simple. So that's why I do love and I do like simplicity, and I think that it's an important way forward. In terms of how that is a solution to this moment, of a crisis, first we have to realize that yes, crisis is an opportunity to change, but it's a crisis first. People are losing their jobs, business are having lots of problems. So we have to, acknowledge that is a crisis and there are some problems, some disruption. So then I think the second point is analyze and not get in a rush, because a lot of time we get a brief about, well, what should we do? What should we say? And it's important to listen first and understand, and then come with possible solution, because otherwise we have seen a lot of people trying to say many things. A very classical one around the globe has been, oh, we are here with you. And at the beginning it was a bit of a reassurance, but in the long term people were like, are you really? I mean, how can you really walk the talk? So I think that at the beginning we had a lot of brief about what could we say, how can we make people feel we are with them. And now we are more receiving a bit more of a project, trying to walk the talk. It's like, what should we do in order to, put the business back in track, or address really the people problem? In that sense, is a bit more profound analysis, and therefore the solutions are still simple but not superficial. So I think the key is trying to find and analyze, to qualify the problem. So when you have many problems, you need to spend a little time to define and qualify the problem, so you can have better problem, and therefore you can have more meaningful, simple solutions. I think that is a way that the brief or the strategy approach somehow has changed.
This is brilliant, and I think this is a good time to segue into AKQA. I think you guys are one of the leaders when it comes to leadership and your vision, right? In terms of providing so much great value to all your clients around the world. Maybe before we deep dive into some of the recent brilliant digital campaigns, what do some of your client base look like? And has the pandemic also changed some of the mix of your clientele during these pandemic times?
Well, we have many different clients, and we work, from big automotive brands to luxury brand to fashion brand to fast moving consumer goods brands. So we are all around in that sense. Also, AKQA is an agency. So what we say is the future faster. And so what we do is that sometimes we don't know, when you have a good problem, you don't know what a solution is, which means it can be a communication solution, it could be an innovation solution, it can be a marketing solution, it can be a digital platform. So when you have a problem, you open up the set of possibilities you have and where you can innovate. So you can see a lot of social stuff. So some is about, some more are more related to the environment, some more of the entertainment, some is very funny, some is very innovative, some is very responsible, sustainable. So we have a big variety of stuff, and we have fun by do it. I think the key in it is also have while you put value with a bit of lightness. So sometimes when I talk to people that are a bit too serious about it, like, yes, but the simple solutions somehow have to be a little bit unexpected and therefore still meaningful. And that's why it become at the end game changer. So that's what we try to do and combine. So you can see, for example, the Air Max work that's done from our colleague in Brazil. So and another thing about AKQA is we don't have so many places. It's not that every country has one. So in Europe, we work a lot with Paris, we work a lot with Berlin, with Copenhagen, with London. So we have an international bunch of people that can work basically on anything. And yeah, so that's what you can see around our website.
I see that you guys are a perfect, mix of the art and the science as well. And of course, this is a digital campaign that, really piqued my interest because it's an AR-enabled campaign, or can I say innovation that you guys have rolled out for Nike. And it's basically a zine or a AR-enabled zine that allows users to customize the iconic shoe, right? Everybody knows about the Air Max. So I'm also one of the biggest fan of these sneakers. And of course, you guys are so great at not just storytelling, but in terms of using technology and innovation to provide this. Maybe while we watch the video, right, walk us through.
Air Max has long been a symbol of creativity in Japan. So to launch 2020's new shoe models, Nike wanted to immerse Tokyo's youth in the creative process. But in a time where consumers were mostly confined at home, Nike wanted a way to keep the Air Max spirit alive without relying on physical events. So we put the word out for Tokyo creators to become the face of the campaign, inviting them to submit their stories and styles digitally. Then we published the best as something that could be seen and touched, with a twist. Introducing Create with Air Max, Nike's first original AR coloring zine, an online to offline to off-the-page content experience that lets you customize your own Air Max in the air in real time. Throughout the printed zine, readers didn't just find a chapter-by-chapter celebration of real Air Max-inspired creativity, but also the latest shoe designs turned into a blank canvas for them to imagine their next pair in their own way. Users simply colored their chosen Air Max on the page, and by viewing the design through their phone, they could see their creation come to life in the air in front of them. The experience took Nike's sneaker customization process to a whole new level of creative expression and spread the magic of Air Max when Tokyo needed it most. Create with Air Max by Nike.
Wow, this is so brilliant. So what do you have to say about this campaign?
Well,
we've already seen so many remarkable things in that short video.
Well, I have to say that I cannot say too much about it because I didn't work on it personally. So I like it a lot. I like the things that you can do. I like, as much that, technology becomes a canvas. So it becomes a better way to tell a nice story. And that's where I also think it's like, I like when I was reading from Pixar, they always say, no matter how big is the innovation, is the story that at the end comes to you, right? So it's not that you see something, you say, oh, what amazing technology is in it, is how it gets an interesting story. You're interested in the overall storytelling, and the pieces of the story comes from different direction, and that surprises your mind, your senses. You want to play with it. So that's what it's all about. And yeah, I love this campaign. So, but I cannot have a deeper insight because I didn't work on it. So
maybe let's talk about a project that you had your feet really wet in. I think there's another campaign that really piqued my interest. It was the Liar Wines campaign. Is that the project that you're 100,000% involved in? Your entire team was involved in it as well?
Well, that one is a personal project, actually. So that is so you took from my LinkedIn, I guess. So that is the winery from my family. So that's why. So I have a winery, and with some friends, my brother and a bunch of crazy people, we just decided to make it something a bit disruptive. So because one of those wine is a Merlot, which is a red wine, and out of the red grapes, we create some white wine. So we call it Liar, because it is a liar. You have a black grapes, a white wine. You're like, what's wrong with that? And so we call it a Liar. We launched it at Brexit Day. So it's like, this is for all of you who bought so many liars. This is a new one. There's another one. So as you can see that, and it got global news. It went everywhere. And as you can see, is adding a bit of lightness. And, at the end, wine is meant to have interesting conversation, but it's so serious. So we said, why don't we build it? And from the product itself, so it's called Liar. It's lunch breaks a day. During quarantine, we did some campaigns about all the lies we say in quarantine. Like, oh, I love to say with my kids all this time. No, you don't. Oh, I love to, no, I do, work out every day. Or I read a book a week. No, you don't. So we all say a lot of lies, and we are having a bit of fun with it. So this is a project I am 100% in. Oh, well, it's more than in, is a personal project. So yes, and we have a bit of coverage worldwide. So we are having a bit of fun with it. Yeah.
Well, I'm not too, big on wine in terms of my knowledge. I think it's pretty much, probably only know 1% about wine, but I've been, quite privileged to speak to a few people who are, wine enthusiasts. I think one of my biggest, most admired entrepreneur and musician, I think he owns a winery as well. His name is Maynard James Keenan from this band called Tool and the Perfect Circle. So recently I met up with, one of his business partners, I think in Melbourne, Australia, who actually introduced him to the Pineful range in Australia. So he was on my podcast recently and told me all the great things about wine. And basically, I was educated a little bit on wine, from 1%, maybe now I know about 2% about wines. And he told me that in Italy, there are great places as well. So since your family is in this business, tell us more. How does the wine, in Italy taste like?
So Italy is quite famous for wines. So we sell wines around the world, and people come to Italy. I guess Italy and France are the two main countries, like historically. But nowadays, you can find great wines everywhere. So in South Africa, in South America, in Australia, in Asia, there are plenty of good wines. But in Italy, the fact is, in Italy, there is a big tradition. So when you go to a wine, you say, oh, is a Merlot or is a Sauvignon or is a Primitivo so it's very serious about where the wines come from and the terroir, and so the soil. So it's all about the product. It comes with a very serious knowledge. And when you talk to people, they're all about, and they are tasting the wine. But
we lost you for a moment.
Okay.
You're back. Okay. Please continue.
So at the end of the day, when you're drinking wine, you and everybody else is, probably in an interesting conversation. You are having fun. You are talking about something nice. So we wanted to disrupt this sort of tradition and say, yes, of course, the wine is amazing, and the wine enthusiast would know that Italian wine is the great wine. So we have the credibility on one hand, but then that helped us to play with it and do a bit of a more, innovative and disruptive stuff. So yes, we wanted to disrupt this tradition and play a little bit more with the wine, story by making something a bit more memorable. That was the idea.
I love that it's inspired by Brexit. It's inspired by, what's happening in the world where so many lies have been told.
How many testimonials we could have, So we can have so many liars that can be a great celebrity and influencer. So, it's a kind of we have a lot of testimonials that can help us, with the fake news. In the world of fake news, we have many, is a nice prize for many people.
It's a very nice narrative, totally original as well and refreshing, because now it makes me more interested to check out your wine, maybe order 6 bottles and you get something free if you order 6 bottles, right? Tell us your promotion campaign.
What we did in Valentine's Day was, again, when you think about liar, and during Valentine's Day, you probably think of your ex. So we said during that day, if you bought 6 bottles, we are going to send personally 1 to your ex. So we did that, and again, we got a bit of news and we got a bit of fun. So the fact is, every promotion is a way to have a little bit of fun and talk about a new story in a little slightly different way.
Totally original as well. So it's definitely going to drive more traffic, drive more orders. So I think lots of people who are digitally transforming, their wine business, they should take a lead from you and maybe contact you after this show and maybe get some tips and advice on how to promote wines, especially in the e-commerce space.
Yeah. For example, I'm working with many Campari brands. So this is Liar is a personal project, but as a AKQA, we work with a Campari group, and the Campari group has many different brands, and this is a work we do with as a AKQA as an agency. So we do have a bit of know-how about not only how to build an interesting narrative, but how then to define the right channels and touch points to make it effective in the digital world. So that, which is very important. right now. So sometimes, again, you think the narrative is all the solution, but actually the way you display the narrative and you use the touch point and you build the lead generation and you follow up on orders and all this matters as much. So that is something as an agency we are very focused on.
This is fantastic. I think we're halfway through the show, so it's time to maybe listen to some music while we sip some tea together. And what better way than to talk about, the late great Ennio Morricone, and someone that I think not just a fellow countryman of yours, someone that you greatly admire as well, right? So let us surprise our audience and maybe let them guess what we're gonna hear next. But for those who are into Western movies, I think this is a song or a theme song that everybody probably knows already by heart. Maybe you can also walk us through later on while we are hearing this. Let's see whether you can hear this, all right? So what did we just hear?
So, well, as you can see that Ennio Morricone was somehow a maestro in adding emotion with simplicity. So all his soundtrack are very, very extremely simple and memorable. So now the fact is you've heard this one, and no matter if you knew it or not, I guess everyone would know it in Italy, but maybe not all around the world. But you cannot unsee it. You cannot not remember it. You cannot forget it. This very few notes and very memorable and very connected to that movie at the level that normally that if you change that music or it would change completely the sound of the emotion that we get. And he did many movies like Mission, like so in some other cases. So this was a bit witty as well, while normally sometimes is more like purely emotional. But every time, so surprisingly simple, and that what makes it to me like a very humble person. So this thing of a craftsman who knows and loves his craft and is every day into it, and ends up doing so much simple thing that makes so much of a difference. For me, is a true inspiration.
That's a brilliant way to put it. I think you paid a really great tribute to your countryman, and he's someone that I actually greatly admire as well. I was born in the generation, was born with grunge music, industrial music, even some metal music. But in the beginning of my music appreciation or discovery phase, classical music wasn't even a big part of some of my collection. And in fact, I was pretty cynical about classical music until I discovered Ennio Morricone. And I think that particular piece that you were just riffing about was from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, right? And it's a theme song that came from a movie in 1966. That's like so long ago, but like what you mentioned, the whistling part, it's still integral part of the movie. It's something that elevates the movie and maybe makes a scene like, sweeping landscaping views. And of course, Clint Eastwood chewing on a cigarette. It makes it so much more classic. And it's a scene that is etched into our minds because of the soundtrack that complements it, right? It makes that scene even better. And I think I'm going to play the next song and maybe you can walk us through as well. why it's so remarkably different, and why Ennio Morricone is someone that is amazing in terms of his ability to do soundtracking across different genres, right? So I think this is gonna be another song that brings back a lot of memories for a lot of people, and we're gonna review what we're gonna play and let people just find out for themselves. I think once they hear the first few notes, they will understand what this song is all about. This is so different, right? What did we just hear?
So this is from Nuovo Cinema Paradiso, which, by the way, got an Oscar to Giuseppe Tornatore, who was the director. And as you were saying, I think I agree with you, which is, I'm not sure he's a classical music. He goes beyond genre. So he is just, matching with emotions. And that was a movie, a very suggestive movie. So the fact of seeing things and having be inspired not only by what happens, but what you see and imaginary. And so that he connects a lot with all those elements which are not necessarily part of the storytelling. So he makes a soundtrack that even now you cannot even see what is going on, but you can connect with the sound of the kind of the mindset or the the feelings. And that was so special. And I think you get to this only when you have this, again, these people that are really connected with their work and work and work and work and refine until it becomes so simple that gets in under your skin rather than. So, for example, he would never showcase how good. So the technical parts is never showcased. It's always reducing until to a point where, for example, you just see the movie and you don't realize that is the things that the soundtrack of it is just comes with the movie. It never takes the protagonism. So it's not like, oh, how good that thing is. It's more about being a soundtrack, which is a company, is unleash the power of the images. And in advertising, for example, that is so important. So I think, yeah, that's a very remarkable piece of work from Tornatore. And again, an inspiration of how you can keep your work, make it simpler, and making, try rather than be famous for what you're doing, making sure your craft is doing the job, or getting under the skin of the people.
I absolutely love it. I love the way you put it, because you mentioned about he's a very humble person as well. I remember that, when he was receiving an Oscar for Lifetime Achievement Award, right? And he was on stage and he mentioned that soundtracks sound better because of the movie that was behind it. I think he's being so humble. Sometimes it's the other way around. Like Cinema Paradiso is such a classic film, and the first few notes immediately brings back to the montage of the kissing scenes, in the movie, and basically it elevates. And I remember when he was asked by his friend, who is the producer for Cinema Paradiso, right? He was handed the script, and he was actually busy with a few other projects, but he decided to drop the other projects that he was working on because he read a script. And when it comes to the montage of scenes where there were kissing going on, he decided, oh, this is going to be something that he should focus on 100%, and to simplify, and to clear his schedule, he's basically, just dive 100,000% into this project of cinema Paradiso, and wrote a great film score behind it. He also roped in his son, who actually worked on the piece for cinema Paradiso, which is something that we just heard. I think that's something that, in the beginning of my music discovery phase, I was cynical about music that is classical, but because of him, I grew to love and appreciate, how classical music, especially, sweeping, orchestration, it makes a film even more epic, right? It's like epic music, having a full orchestra makes things so much better. And sometimes it's the simple things that really elevates a film as well.
Yes, I think that if you go, there are some people who makes those movies so special. Another one would be Bregovic, for example. So Bregovic would just make a completely different kind of soundtrack, but it, again, is volcanic music, and that gives so much of a vibrancy to that movie. And so if you go, and maybe in Asia, the Kusturica, so the Kusturica was still in the Balkans, but they're in Asia. What's his name? Kim Ki-duk kind of movies, and he the way he displays and he create the stories with simplicity. The Kim Ki-duk, for me, again, is a kind of things that I admire a lot, and goes back to something that reducing, and sometimes it's so simple, and that becomes so true. And that is, for me, is there are very, very few of those people that make a kind of an art so iconic. So it could be Kim Ki-duk, it could be Kusturica, it could be Morricone, or Fellini, for example. And those are, for me, a key element in my education.
And before we end our discussion about Ennio Morricone, we have to hear The Mission, right, which is a film that you mentioned as well. I think this film came out in 1996. And again, this is another great film that is highlighted, is elevated by the film score. Let's hear it. When I hear this, I feel like weeping. Does it have the same impact on you as well?
Oh yeah. This one really makes me cry. And
I think it's called Gabriel's Oboe, right? If I'm not wrong, is this one of the more impressive, or one of your favorite compositions by Ennio in recent years?
Well, it probably is the one that makes me cry the most. And the magic of it is that basically music, as much as perfume, just jumps. So no, when you think about something, it goes in your prefrontal cortex. So you are processing it, while music goes beyond it in your limbic system, like perfume. So sometimes you go in a place and you smell something, it gives you an emotion, you don't know why. And with music happens exactly the same. So it gets to that's what I'm saying, under your skin. You get to music and somehow it makes you cry and you don't know why. So often it makes you get to emotion first, and then you rationalize and you say, oh yeah, that was the music from Mission, and that movie made me cry, and that's why it goes so much into it. But it's so amazing, that power. It's so special, so magic, so human, that, and in that special case, really, I have to like, okay, now I'm not going to cry right now, but I have to do a little effort not to.
This is fantastic. I wish we could talk like an hour or two about Ennio Morricone, because it's such a hero to so many. And normally when someone passed, then they realize that, what a great loss to the music world, to this planet, to humanity, in fact. And I think more people are now putting a spotlight on him and his great work. But one of the best way to discover, definitely, in the days of the Tower Records or HMV, just walk to the classical section or the soundtrack section. He has like amazing myriad of releases and re-releases as well, that basically fill the entire shelf, right? It's like there's so many compositions that he has made, and there's so many film scores that he's responsible for. It's impossible to actually hear everything at one go. So I'm definitely going to ask you for a curated playlist or the top 10 songs that you love of Ennio, maybe for our next podcast, which is all about music. But because this CMO Asia podcast is catered for our CMOs, for marketers, and of course, some of those, 20% of those are entrepreneurs as well. We want to maybe give you a chance to maybe tell us your last message for our audience before we let you go. We have just passed the 35-minute mark. Any last message for people who are tuning in right now about conclude, what we just discussed today about AKQA, about dealing with a pandemic, about the importance of simplicity and things like that. Tell us what's your last take on today's discussion.
So I think that, I don't know if I have a takeout. What I think is, what I do like in general, we have seen that we have said that that we have been going through an emergency situation. First, we need to acknowledge it's difficult, and it's difficult for many people. We have to listen, what are the problems, and business problem, personal problem, and all this. And possibly trying to deep dive into what the situation is. I think that at the end, sometimes you try to have some simple solution to get under the skin of people, which is something that can change, or maybe that can change your day. And that's maybe good enough sometimes. And can do it with an incredible technological innovative solution, or it can be with a smile, like with a wine, or sometimes there's a bit of lightness into your life. At the end of the day, what I like is more this feeling of not knowing. So basically, which I think, rather than just going back to a normality, which is like, oh, I know what normality looks like. I like, and I think that main change is that we don't know. And maybe we should embrace the not knowing and make it somehow fueling our feeling, our thinking, our decisions. So not knowing, I think, is a new sensation, is a new landscape, and that should be possibly an inspiration. So I think that for me is something that I like, and that somehow brings me back to this feeling of not knowing, addressing. So finding we have new problems, and that's having new problems maybe will not bring us to a new normal, but to a new something, which is great.
Yeah, that's fantastic. This is a great way to sign off this show. We are almost at a 40-minute mark. So I'm going to re-invite you back to the show sometime in the future where we talk more about music, talk more about marketing, and talk more about innovation as well, because there are tons of other things that we haven't even touched on in today's show. But there's always a next time. And I really appreciate you for coming on and sharing with us all the great things that you're doing, as well as your team around the world are doing. So here's a great weekend wish to you. And let's keep on listening to the great music, that the artists and the musicians and the creators have all provided us, and also that we can lean on and lean into during these unpredictable times, right, during the pandemic. So I wish you safe and stay well, and hope to see you once again in the future episode. So Lorenzo, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, and thank you for the curiosity of linking to me and say, what this guy has to say. So I think your curiosity and your interest is remarkable. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Likewise. I'll see you very soon. Goodbye.
Bye. Bye-bye.